Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Wisdom of the Week podcast. I'm your host, Robbie J, and thank you so much for joining me today. It is Friday, September 22nd, and in today's episode, we're going to talk all about honesty. We're going to talk all about honest living and what that means, how that influences your relationships, your spiritual path, and your relationship to nature and to the Creator, as well as how it influences in your personal heart and soul. So, honesty is foundational to living a spiritual way of life. If we can't be honest, it brings chaos and distrust into our lives, into all of our relationships, including our relationship with ourselves. And so one of the really interesting things about honesty is when we cannot be honest with ourselves, we can't be honest with others. To be honest with another, first we have to have that clarity with ourselves. So one of the ways this influences our relationships is that infidelity, right, is basically the destroyer of all relationships. And when I say infidelity, I don't necessarily mean cheating on your partner. Infidelity can happen in many different ways, and not just in intimate relationships. Infidelity is when we go back on our word, or we break an agreement, or we do some action that begins to deteriorate trust. And so in relationships, generally it's not like someone just goes off and cheats on their partner. That would be an extreme version of infidelity. Often there's many little moments that lead up to that. And so when we look at this, in relationships, it is so important to be honest 100% of the time. To practice honesty in our relationships, especially those closest to us. If we can't be honest with our partner, our lovers, and our best friends, then this is a serious problem. And we need to reassess our life, really, because those are the people we're meant to be the closest to. Those are the people we're meant to be able to trust the deepest. And it's a good barometer for a relationship. Can you be totally honest with that person? Unhealthy relationships, if you're honest, sometimes it doesn't go very well. Codependent relationships, that can be a serious symptom, and that's a very big insight. And then we got to be honest about that whole relationship, right? What is the reality and truth of this whole relationship, this codependency? So honesty is so important in our relationships. When we look at this from a spiritual standpoint, how does honesty affect our spirituality and our spiritual path? So it's funny because relationships are everything. They're the foundation for our whole existence. What is your relationship first with yourself, with your friends and your family, your partners, your community, with nature and creation, with spirit and God, right? These are all different forms of relationships. And so when we look at spirituality, right, whatever you call that spiritual path, whether it be your relationship in a religion or in an esoteric way, however that is, right, there's many ways to connect spiritually. And how does honesty affect that? It's foundational. So I'd like to share a little story with you guys that I think you'll find interesting. So I was walking this morning. I live here on Vancouver Island, and it's very dry here right now. We haven't had a lot of rain, and this is concerning because there's a lot of wildfires, there's a lot of droughts, and it's unsustainable, as we all know. Water is life. And here on the coast, there's a lot of cedar trees Big, huge Western red cedars, just beautiful trees. And for me, they feel like my friends, truly. I love the cedar trees. Above all the other trees, there's something about that cedar, that grandmother cedar, that speaks to my heart. And I love her so deeply. And I've gone to her many times, and she's helped me to heal. She's taken negative things from me. She's supported me to understand how to walk in a better way and how to clean myself when I take on negativity. And so what I've noticed this last week, everywhere around where I live, the cedar trees are dying. I would say about maybe 15%, just to give a random number, of the leaves are turning brown. And that's normal for other trees. It's fall, right? Everything's dying, but in the way of the cedar is an evergreen. The cedars don't drop their leaves ever unless they're sick. And so these cedar trees are becoming brown, and it concerns me, right? It concerns me. Because I remember many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, when I first started my path, I met an indigenous woman who lives here on the coast. And she shared with me a prophecy that her people talk about, which is that when the cedars turn brown, it's a time of another great purging or a great cleansing or a new beginning on the planet. And, some people might call that the apocalypse. Who knows what the reality of that is or will be? Maybe there's a literal apocalypse and cleansing like the Great Floods or the Ice Age. Maybe it's simply a metaphor for the transformation that we're all going through, not just humankind, the whole planet. Who's to say, right? We'll all find out, right? That's the fun part and the scary part. So I've been thinking about this prophecy that she had told me. It's funny how you hear something 10 years ago, and I mean, how many things have I been told, and how many things have you been told on your path, and we forget them. And then one thing sticks, and here I am, reflecting on that, and there's medicine in it now to this day. So I'm watching these cedar trees, and I'm concerned. I feel worry and fear in my system every time I see them. And in this awareness, I'm being honest with myself. I'm like, man, I'm feeling fear and worry. And, a lot of the path is to overcome those things, not to push them away, not to deny them, to confront them and to free ourselves from them. Because for me, that's true liberation, is to free oneself from fear, insecurity, doubt. And so when these things arise, I contemplate them. And so I'm sitting with this worry and fear. And this morning, it was arising again. I got up early and was off for a walk, and I saw this one tree. I'm walking by it, feeling worried. And then I'm aware that I'm kind of just like, no one likes to be worried about, right? Like, do you like when people worry about you? No, it's not a very good feeling, right? So I'm standing here walking past this cedar tree, and I'm all worried about the cedar. And I feel that negativity. And, it's not that the cedar was upset or anything. It's a cedar tree. But I felt the incongruency there. This is a form of honesty, right? The incongruency. So then the cedar talks to me, right? Because we all have that ability to hear nature speak. The plants talk to us. We just have to quiet our mind enough to listen. And so the cedar said, come talk to me. Okay, why not? So nothing better to do, right? Let's go talk to a cedar tree. So I walk up to the cedar tree. I begin to talk to it. And right away, she shows me something inside of myself. She says, you think you're afraid for me, meaning the cedar tree. You think you're afraid for me, but you're afraid for yourself. This is a selfish fear. And that may sound harsh, but the truth is sometimes a little harsh. Nature is truthful. They call the grandmother cedar a grandmother for a reason. Sometimes grandmothers can be really sweet and kind, and sometimes they can be harsh and ruthless. And as soon as she said that, I felt it in the depths of my being, in the rootedness of my connection to the earth. And I realized I've been telling this story. Oh, I'm worried for the cedar trees. I'm concerned for the cedar trees. They're my friends. I love them so much and I want them to be healthy. And this whole story I was telling myself. And in reality, when she showed me that, I realized I was far more fearful of myself. What if all of nature is dying? What if I don't have the cedar trees anymore? I need the cedar trees. They're my friends. They help me. If I lose them, what will I do? What if the apocalypse is coming? And all these worries and fears that kind of masquerade as genuine concern and love for another, when in reality, they're very self-absorbed. And I don't say that with judgment. I don't say that like it's a bad thing. It is what it is. And it's a matter of, does that align with my intention for my life? Does that align with the path that Spirit has laid before me? And I say no, because I'm working to cleanse those things from my system. So when she said that, it was like, whew, okay, interesting. Thank you. And it brought, at first it was like a sting. And then it brought a sense of clarity. It brought a sense of peace, that it'll be okay, that this cedar is unconcerned. In the grand scheme of things, it will be okay. We're going to be okay. And it's safe to let go of that fear. So you can see how being honest is so important. Nature is honest. The spiritual path is about honesty. And to portray another example of this, someone may feel this type of fear, and they may then have a whole cascade of actions in their life. Like, we need to save the cedar trees. We need to create a movement. Or I need to go out and pray for all these cedar trees, and I need to save the cedar trees, and have this epic mission that feels so virtuous and so spiritual and so enlightened, and yet it's rooted in fear. And it's actually rooted more in selfishness than selflessness. And the lie that we tell ourselves, saying, I'm part of a cause, I'm part of a mission, I have such good intentions, I'm such a good person. And it's not to say that if you're selfish, you're a bad person. It's just, is that truth, or is that an illusion that we tell ourselves because we don't want to be honest? Right? And can we make a truly good prayer, and can we create a truly good movement in the world if we're rooted in fear and a lie? Maybe. Would it be more effective if we rooted ourselves in unconditional love and selflessness and truth? I believe it would be. Because that just seems to me to align with the principles of God and the principles of the universe. So those are some thoughts for you. And I have one more thing I want to share. Insecurity. So this is number 3, right, of how honesty applies to our life. Number 1, we have in our relationships. Number 2, we have in our spiritual path. And number 3, we have in this form of insecurity, which ties into all of this, which is perhaps more about our relationship to ourself. So everyone has insecurities. It's this taboo subject, especially for men. We don't want to admit we're insecure. Somehow that seems vulnerable or wrong or weak, and it has nothing to do with that. It's just part of the human conditioning. And so based on this belief and this perspective that insecurity is bad, that it's weak, that it's wrong, we then choose to deny it and live in a lie. We live a lie. Because we lie to ourselves. We say, I'm not insecure, I'm a big, strong man, or I'm a big, strong person, or, I'm confident, and all these things, which, we can be insecure and have confidence. It's not black or white. And at the same time, the more we acknowledge and confront and learn to manage and, be aware of our insecurity, the more authentic and real confidence will arise within us. And so we can see how when we want to believe something, we often can deny the truth. So honesty is about really looking inward and being brutally honest, like that cedar tree, with ourselves, shining that light of love and truth and realness and reality into us. And say, wow, shit, I am pretty insecure. What am I going to do about that? Wow, I'm not as confident as I thought. What am I going to do about that? Right? Because we all got a little boy and a little girl inside of us. And that little boy and little girl, all they want is to feel loved. All they want is to feel valid. All they want is to feel acknowledged. And they just want to feel good enough. And a lot of people in their life were fed a big lie. Their parents were not honest with them. Their parents said, in one way, shape, or form, sometimes directly, or sometimes in a passive way, just in the way they relate to you. They say, you're not good enough. Or you're only good enough when you succeed at school, or when you do what I say, or when you behave, or when you're not bouncing off the walls, or having a temper tantrum. You're valid when you do what we say, based on this form of authoritarianism. A lot of parenting is rooted in this kind of dictatorship, this tyrannical way of trying to control a child. And that's not judgment, it's just what it is. And the result of that is often a woundedness. And so we're adults now. And so we can validate ourselves. We can give that love to ourselves and to that child within us. And when we do that, there's deep transformation. There's deep sense of security and stability and safety and confidence that's from the inside out rather than from the outside in, right? Because most confidence is based on like status or power or money, or different things that are, part of life and also very, like fleeting. Those things are not going to last forever. And therefore, if we build our confidence on that, there's always going to be an undertone of insecurity, being like, oh man, I'm scared I might lose that. So this is about honesty, right? This is about how do we be honest about our insecurities. Just see them for what they are. Explore them. Stop pushing them down. And take tabs, journal it out, write it out, reflect on it, ask yourself, right? How am I insecure? How are my insecurities showing up? For men, if you want to know your insecurity, look at your relationship to women. That will show you a lot of your insecurities. Whether you're, a ladies' man or a player, or whether you're in a long-term relationship or you've been in a string of committed relationships, whatever it may be, it's going to show you a lot. And so I want to end this podcast with a challenge for everyone listening. A challenge for you to be honest with yourself this week. Ask yourself, how am I honest and how am I dishonest? What lies have I been living? How have I let fear hold me back in my life? Be honest about your shadow. Explore it. How am I insecure in my relationships? And how is that interfering with my relationships? So I invite you to really reflect on that this week. Really contemplate it. And let me know, how does it go? I'd love to hear from you. And so, thank you for listening to Wisdom of the Week. I'm your host, Robbie J. And it's been really lovely to share with you today. And I really hope that this has brought value to your morning, to your day, to your life, to your week. And if it has, I'd love to have your support. Share this podcast, share it with someone who can gain value from it. Like it, subscribe to my channel so that this podcast can reach more people and support more people on their path of healing and awakening.